The Impossible Planet, Chapter 5. The Wider Galaxy. Johann Edgar, American NSA Director. May 29, 2148. Outside the window of my swanky hotel room on the screw you I'm important the floor, I watched as the morning sun began to peek out from under New York's skyline, pushing curtains of soft pink and orange sky up with it. Returning to the desk bearing my laptop with a sigh, I took a sip of my third cup of coffee and noted with dismay that it wouldn't be nearly enough. All things considered, our first contact with extraterrestrial life was a grade A shit show. To the Gifford, we must have looked like a bunch of idiot children. Frankly, it's a damn miracle they were still willing to take us seriously after all that. Following the aliens' revelation that they were in fact here not for Earth, but instead to colonize Venus, the room erupted into pandemonium in front of our visitors for the umpteenth time. "We apologize," I remember Vaisal saying into her screen, the words translating back to the alien's language as she continued to speak in an impressively even tone given the context. "You've caught us at a disadvantage. We would very much like to continue talks with you at a later date once we've had time to arrange ourselves and look over the information you've given us." The aliens were quick to oblige us, and after some negotiation we agreed to reconvene on the 30th. This time, every world leader would have a hand-picked team of their best and brightest to handle the talks. Of course, Lau and Stina were quick to propose meetings with individual nations instead of the UN. "Surely it would be in everyone's better interest if each nation got our own meeting," the chairman had added, pretending as per usual to be looking out for everyone. "Besides, China has a great deal of influence on this planet. Whatever your goals are with humanity, we should not be simply lumped in with the rest." In response, the Gifford leader, Thivel, I think he called himself, made it crystal clear that they had no interest whatsoever in bickering nations. They would meet us as one or not at all. Footage from the UN conference leaked within hours of its conclusion. Blurry images of the Gifford were posted and reposted thousands of times before we could scrub them. By the time we were finally able to plug all of the leaks, public outcry had reached a fever pitch high enough that President Stein authorized the release of a transcript redacted much too lightly for my liking. "Aliens say Earth is basically hell," snarked a talk show host from the television I'd left on overnight because I couldn't catch a wink of sleep without at least some noise to remind me the planet was still spinning. Frankly, I could have told them that. Standing up again and snatching the remote on the bedside table, I flicked the channel over to the news. Immediately, I was greeted with images of protests going on all across the country, all across the damn world. "Close the skies," one sign in Texas demanded, their faith in our ability to do a drastic overestimation. "We are not alone," proclaimed another sign held by a smiling young woman in Los Angeles who looked to be about college age. There, people had taken to the streets in celebration, demanding full disclosure from Washington and open dialogue with our visitors. "God made man in his image" was a popular slogan throughout the Bible Belt as mega pastors debated whether the aliens were a government hoax or a satanic deception. One of them even suggested we go on another crusade to purge the devil's children. Hopefully, the Gifford had a good sense of humor about that one, because I could definitely think of worse excuses for a preemptive strike than "the natives think we're demons." "I don't think this discovery belongs to Washington or Beijing or Moscow," began Ruby Feller, a Nobel laureate in biochemistry being interviewed by the Morning News. "It belongs to all of humanity, and therefore we should all be allowed to access the knowledge." Ruby, along with a group of other scientists, journalists, and universities, was behind an already snowballing movement for the data packages supplied to Earth's governments by the Gifford to be made open for public viewing. Meanwhile, the data packet they were so feverishly demanding sat in an unmarked folder on my laptop locked behind a retinal scan. Containing roughly a gigabyte of data, mostly images and translated text with a few videos sprinkled in, the Gifford's little welcoming gift contained information that members of the public would, and honestly might eventually kill for. Given how loose-lipped the UN tended to be, my best guess was we had a week until half of the data on this packet was available to the American people. That, of course, was a disaster for another time. Right now, my job was to look through the documents provided and turn them into a neat little list of bullet points and questions for the president to make use of at the conference. Opening the document translated as Gifford Biology, I wasn't surprised to find that most of it made absolutely zero goddamn sense to me. Chemical names I couldn't even pronounce fattened up the file until I could barely get through a sentence. let alone tell what it meant. As a precaution in case the info was outside my field, the president had authorized me to securely share files with whoever I felt was necessary. Pulling up my secure email application, I found Lenfield's name in the United States civil servant contact list and shot him a quick message. Not too many details, just enough to get his attention. Need help assessing Gifford biology. If I send you the file, can you tell me in layman's terms what the hell it means on a voice chat? The response came in a matter of minutes. Absolutely, Lenfield had replied, probably jumping with joy at the opportunity to look over this junk. Following the 6-step process for a secure file transfer, I sent over the biology file and within a few minutes was staring at the SETI director's face on screen. I got the files, he told me, stating the obvious, as on his screen, he pulled up a printed sheet, something that he wasn't supposed to do without prior approval. Relax, he sighed in response to my glare. I used my personal printer for this and didn't connect to Wi-Fi. Never mind that, I sighed, taking a long gulp of my coffee and briefly standing up to go refill the cup. Lenfield was already looking through the printed file as I got back. His eyes lit up like a kid in a candy store. Tell me what we've got here. It only took Lenfield a few minutes to skim through the file, though every few seconds I could see him stop to highlight something. This is amazing, he almost laughed. Gifford biology is an entirely different template of life than ours. They really are like living crystals. Focus, Lenfield, I growled, looking over the cryptic file with tired eyes that didn't seem to care much how important the words on my screen were supposed to be. You'll have time to look at this later. For now, I need to know what's going to be on the file I sent to President Stein. Okay, what do you need to know? Lenfield nodded obligingly. Start simple for me. What are they made out of? The SETI director paused for a second, chewing on the information given to him. Remember how they talked about us being carbon-based? He began at last, waiting for me to nod in affirmation before continuing. Basically, we're carbon-based because almost all of the important stuff that makes us up is carbon. Carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, all the way down to our DNA. Well, the Gifford are silicon-based. Instead of carbohydrates, they use siloxane chains. Instead of lipids, they've got layered silanes. In essence, their biology uses completely different building blocks than we do. Silicon? I hummed, ponderously taking another sip of my 4th cup of coffee and craving a cigarette enough that if one got placed in my hand at that moment, I wouldn't have hesitated to light up. So like rocks and minerals, you mean? Exactly, Lenfield nodded. Their biochemistry is like nothing we've ever seen on Earth. It's almost more akin to geochemistry. I nodded along to the explanation, opening an empty file and writing down carbon to us = silicon to them. Those temperature listings the Gifford gave us, are they accurate? I demanded, recalling the shock I'd felt when they calmly explained to the UN chamber that their bodies only work at temperatures that could melt the engine of my car into slag. From what I can tell, their metabolism requires a hell of a lot more than ours does to get the same energy turnover, Lenfield replied, raising some whipped cream heavy hippie abomination of coffee to his lips and taking a sip. I can't say for sure, but odds are they're telling the truth here. What happens if they come to Earth's surface? Can they survive here? What about risks of pathogen transmission? He shook his head in response. It's possible they could survive on Earth's surface for a minute or two, but they'd freeze up quickly. The Gifford would need environmental suits to come down here. As for pathogens, it would be virtually impossible for anything of theirs to infect us or vice versa. Our biologies are too different. All right, so Earth's too cold for them. What about our weapons? I asked, immediately causing Lenfield to recoil slightly. The notion of war with an alien species wasn't one either of us relished, Lenfield because he didn't want us to fight, me because I didn't want us to lose, but nevertheless it had to be asked. Lenfield rubbed his forehead like he hated even thinking about it. It's hard to say for sure. I don't think small arms fire would do much. You'd need armor-piercing ammunition or high-caliber rounds to do any real damage. However, and I cannot stress this enough, the technological gap between them and us is so extreme that in any real conflict we lose badly. How badly? Dinosaurs versus asteroid, he replied bluntly. Those 3 words more than enough to paint a picture for me. It wasn't a pretty one. What about nukes? I demanded, my mind immediately landing on the literal nuclear option. Would our arsenal even matter? The SETI director shook his head grimly. Almost certainly not. Sure, maybe we could take out a few ships. assuming they don't have any missile defenses, but even then there's nothing we could do to strike back. Their nearest outpost is 20 light-years away, so we couldn't retaliate in any meaningful fashion. Long story short, it's a good thing they came in peace. Is there anything else the president needs to know about them? I continued, pivoting away from the uncomfortable topic of how unilaterally fucked we were if the aliens decided to stop playing nice. Check out the information box at the bottom, Lenfield replied, his grim tone returning to the prior one of excitement. Scrolling down to the badly placed in my opinion box of easily digestible information, the thing that jumped out at me most was their lifespan. 800, 1,000 years, I murmured, blinking hard in total confidence that I was reading it wrong. No matter how I looked at the numbers on screen, though, they never changed their story. Yeah, Lenfield replied, his tone saturated with awe. It makes sense when you think about it. Their crystalline biology is incredibly stable compared to ours, fewer replication errors, less structural wear. Think of how much knowledge a Gifford scientist can acquire throughout their lifespan. So you're telling me a Gifford today could have been alive when the Magna Carta was signed? I asked, already knowing the answer and dreading what this meant for our politics. People like Stein could barely see past their 4-year terms, and even the Supreme Court justices only sat for a few decades at most. Imagine the experience their leaders can pick up in that time. Their average politician probably looks like a downright mastermind compared to ours. Not only was that piece of information going in the president's document, I went ahead and gave it the dubious honor of being underlined. Shortly after, Lenfield disconnected from the call to continue chewing on the document I'd given him, leaving me alone with 4 Empire dossiers. Gifford Empire, Yovi Imperium, Funak Parliament, and Vela Faithful. Oh boy, I murmured to myself, selecting the first article in preparation to once again be floored by the sheer absurdity of the wider galaxy we just got dropped into.